Tyler wanted to humiliate his ex-girlfriend by inviting her to prom with the popular crowd watching. He thought she would show up alone, looking awkward and out of place. But when Maya stepped out of a white stretch limousine with the most popular kids from 3 different schools, everyone froze. The same girl he once called a social outcast now commanded attention like royalty. And that was just the beginning. In the prestigious halls of Westfield Academy, a private school nestled in the heart of Connecticut's affluent suburbs, there lived a 17-year-old named Tyler Ashford. He was everything parents dreamed their sons would become: captain of the lacrosse team, president of student government, and heir to his father's real estate empire. With his perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes, and confident stride, Tyler walked through school like he owned every brick in its ivy-covered walls. Everyone at Westfield knew Tyler as the golden boy who could do no wrong. Teachers praised his leadership skills, girls swooned when he passed by, and guys wanted to be in his inner circle. He drove a brand-new BMW to school, wore watches that cost more than most people's cars, and threw parties at his family's estate that became legendary among the Connecticut prep school crowd. But behind all the privilege and perfection, Tyler had one weakness that ate at him every single day: his pride. For 2 years, Tyler had been dating Maya Rodriguez, a quiet and brilliant girl who had earned her spot at Westfield through academic excellence rather than family wealth. Maya was beautiful in an understated way, with warm brown eyes, long dark hair she often kept in a simple ponytail, and a gentle smile that could light up any room. She wore modest clothes from department stores, carried her books in a worn backpack, and took the public bus to school every morning. While Tyler's world revolved around social status and appearances, Maya found joy in books, art, and meaningful conversations about life and dreams. Their relationship had been the talk of the school when it began, the popular prince dating the scholarship girl. Some called it romantic, others whispered it was just a phase. But for those 2 years, they seemed genuinely happy together. Maya would cheer at Tyler's lacrosse games, and he would sit with her in the library pretending to study while she helped him understand literature assignments he couldn't be bothered to read properly. But as senior year approached and college acceptance letters started arriving, something shifted. Tyler's friends began making comments about how different their futures would be. They talked about the exclusive universities they'd attend, the connections they'd make, the lives of privilege that awaited them. And slowly, cruelly, they began to question whether Maya belonged in Tyler's world. "Dude, you know she's going to state on financial aid while you're headed to Yale," his best friend Cameron said one day as they sat in the school's upscale cafeteria. "Are you really going to do long distance with someone who doesn't understand your lifestyle?" Tyler had dismissed the comments at first, but they planted seeds of doubt that grew with each passing week. His parents, who had initially been polite to Maya, began making subtle suggestions about girls from appropriate families who would be attending his future university. His mother would mention daughters of family friends, showing him their Instagram photos and talking about upcoming charity galas where he could meet more suitable companions. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening in March, just 2 months before prom. Maya had been accepted to Columbia University with a full academic scholarship, an achievement that should have made Tyler proud. Instead, it made him feel threatened and confused. How could someone from her background achieve something so prestigious while he had barely managed to get into Yale despite his family's donations and connections? They were sitting in Tyler's BMW outside Maya's modest apartment complex in a neighborhood that his friends would never visit. She had just shown him the acceptance letter, her eyes bright with excitement and hope. "Tyler, can you believe it? Columbia. I never thought I'd actually get in, let alone with a full ride. I'm going to study journalism, maybe work for the Times someday. I could actually make a difference in the world." But instead of celebrating with her, Tyler felt something dark rise in his chest. All he could hear were his friends' voices, his parents' expectations, the whispers that followed him in school hallways. "Maya," he said, his voice cold and distant. "We need to talk." She turned to him, her smile fading as she saw his expression. "What's wrong? Are you not happy for me?" Tyler stared straight ahead through the windshield, watching the rain streak down the glass. "This isn't working anymore." "What isn't working?" Maya's voice became small, confused. "Us. This relationship. We're going in different directions. You're going to Columbia to chase some dream of changing the world, and I'm going to Yale to prepare for real life, for business, for responsibilities you wouldn't understand." Maya's acceptance letter crumpled slightly in her hands. "I don't understand. We talked about this. We said we'd make it work. You said distance wouldn't matter if we really cared about each other." Tyler finally turned to look at her, and his next words came out harsher than he'd intended. "Maya, let's be honest about what this was. We're from different worlds. I'm going to be running my father's company someday. I'll need someone who understands that life, someone who can fit into that society. You're brilliant, I'll give you that. But brilliance isn't enough. You don't have the background, the connections, the social skills needed for the life I'm going to live." The words hit Maya like physical blows. She stared at him, her dark eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "The life you're going to live? What about the life we talked about building together? What about all the times you said you loved how real I was, how I kept you grounded, how I made you want to be better?" "I was 17 and confused," Tyler said, each word calculated to wound. "This is reality. My parents were right. I need someone from my own background, someone who already knows how to navigate society events, country clubs, business dinners, someone like Madison Webb or Stephanie Chase, girls who understand what's expected." Maya's voice broke slightly. "Girls whose daddies own companies and whose trust funds will be ready when they turn 21. If that's how you want to put it, yes." Tyler's tone was ice cold. "Maya, you take the bus to school. You buy your clothes at Target. You've never been to the Hamptons or skied in Aspen or attended a charity gala. You don't even know which fork to use at a formal dinner." Each word was designed to make her feel small, inadequate, unworthy, and they worked. Maya's shoulders sagged as the tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over. "I see," she whispered. "So these 2 years meant nothing. All those times you said I was different from other girls, that I was special because I cared about more than money and status. That was all a lie." Tyler shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, even though something in his chest was twisting painfully. "People change. Priorities change. I'm thinking about my future now, not high school fantasies." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and reached for the door handle. "I never asked you to take care of me financially. I never wanted your money or your status. I just wanted to be with someone I loved, someone I thought loved me back for who I am." "Well, now you know better," Tyler said, staring straight ahead again. "You'll thank me someday when you realize how impossible it would have been." Maya opened the car door, letting in the cold rain. Before she got out, she turned back one last time. "Tyler, someday you're going to realize that money and status can't buy you happiness, love, or genuine connection. And when that day comes, I hope you remember this moment and how you threw away something real for something shallow." "I'll take my chances," Tyler replied coldly. Maya stepped out into the rain, and Tyler drove away without looking back. But as he watched her figure disappear in his rearview mirror, hunched against the storm and clutching her Columbia acceptance letter, something inside him felt hollow and wrong. The next day at school, word spread quickly about Tyler and Maya's breakup. Cameron and the rest of Tyler's crew were congratulatory, patting him on the back and talking about how he was finally free to date someone more appropriate. The popular girls began circling immediately, sensing opportunity. But Tyler noticed things he'd never seen before. He watched Maya walk through the hallways with her head held high, greeting her small circle of friends with genuine warmth. He saw how the younger students looked up to her when she tutored them in the library. He observed how she volunteered to help struggling classmates without expecting anything in return. And for the first time, he realized that while he was popular because of what his family had, Maya was respected because of who she was. Still, his pride wouldn't let him admit his mistake. Instead, he threw himself into his new image as the eligible bachelor of Westfield Academy. Within a week, he was dating Madison Webb, a perfectly polished blonde whose father owned a chain of luxury hotels. Madison was everything Tyler had told Maya he needed: wealthy, well-connected, familiar with high society, and utterly uninterested in anything deeper than shopping, parties, and social media followers. But as weeks passed, Tyler found conversations with Madison mind-numbingly boring. She never challenged his thoughts, never made him laugh the way Maya had, never looked at him like he was someone worth knowing beyond his last name and bank account. Their relationship was a series of Instagram-worthy moments with no real substance beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Maya seemed to be thriving. Her grades remained perfect, she joined the debate team and led them to a state championship, and she started a tutoring program for underprivileged kids in the community. She never spoke badly about Tyler to anyone, never tried to turn mutual friends against him. She simply continued being herself, kind, intelligent, and genuine. This only made Tyler angrier. How dare she seem so unaffected by their breakup? How dare she continue succeeding and being admired while he felt increasingly empty despite having everything he thought he wanted? As prom season approached in late April, Tyler's wounded ego began crafting a plan for revenge. He wanted to show Maya and everyone else that he had moved on to better things. He wanted to prove that she meant nothing to him, that their relationship had been insignificant, that he was thriving without her. "I'm going to ask Maya to prom," Tyler announced to his friends during lunch one Friday afternoon. Cameron nearly choked on his sandwich. "What? Dude, you're dating Madison? And didn't you just spend months explaining why Maya wasn't good enough for you?" Tyler's smile was cold and calculating. "That's exactly the point. I'm not asking her to go with me. I'm asking her to attend so she can watch me dance with Madison, see how happy I am, realize what she lost when I broke up with her. Think about it. She'll show up alone, probably in some cheap dress from a discount store, and have to sit there watching me live my best life with someone who actually fits into my world." His friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. Even they could see the cruelty in this plan. "Tyler, that's pretty harsh, man," said Jackson, one of the more decent guys in their group. "Maya never did anything to you. Why do you want to hurt her?" "I'm not trying to hurt her," Tyler lied smoothly. "I'm giving her closure. She needs to see that I've moved on so she can move on too. It's actually kind of me when you think about it." But everyone at the table could see the vindictive gleam in Tyler's eyes. This wasn't about kindness or closure. This was about a bruised ego seeking to wound someone who had dared to succeed without him. That afternoon, Tyler approached Maya at her locker. She was organizing her books, preparing for her weekend volunteer work at the local community center where she taught art classes to elementary school kids. "Maya," he called out, using the confident tone that had always worked on other girls. She turned, her expression neutral but guarded. "Tyler, what do you want?" "I wanted to talk to you about prom." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" Tyler leaned against the adjacent locker, trying to appear casual. "I know things ended badly between us, and I feel terrible about that. I was stressed about college, about the future, and I said things I didn't mean. I want to make it up to you." Maya's expression didn't change. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "I want you to come to prom. As my guest. Not my date, obviously, since I'm going with Madison. But I think it would be good for both of us to show everyone that we can be mature about this, that there are no hard feelings. You deserve to be there, Maya. You've worked just as hard as any of us to earn your place at Westfield. Maya studied his face for a long moment, and Tyler felt uncomfortable under her searching gaze. It was as if she could see right through his fake sincerity to the petty motivations beneath. "Let me get this straight," Maya said slowly. "You want me to come to prom to watch you dance with your new girlfriend and pretend to be happy about it, all so you can feel better about how you treated me?" Tyler's mask slipped slightly. "It's not like that. I just think it would be mature of us to—" "Tyler," Maya interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "What you did to me was cruel. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like everything I've accomplished means nothing because I don't have the right pedigree or bank account. But you know what? I've realized something important since then." She stepped closer, and Tyler found himself leaning back involuntarily. "Your opinion of me doesn't matter. Your approval doesn't matter. The fact that you think I need your pity invitation to feel validated shows how little you understood about who I am. I don't need to prove anything to you, to your friends, or to anyone else in this school." Tyler felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. This wasn't going according to his plan at all. "Maya, you're misunderstanding." "No, I understand perfectly." Maya closed her locker with a quiet click. "But you know what? I'll come to your prom, Tyler. Not because I need your invitation or your approval, but because I want to. I've earned my place at this school just as much as anyone else, and I'm not going to let your opinion or anyone else's stop me from celebrating my senior year." She picked up her backpack and started to walk away, then turned back with a small smile that Tyler couldn't quite read. "Thank you for the invitation, Tyler. I'll see you there." As Maya walked away, Tyler felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease. He'd gotten what he wanted. She was going to come and witness his triumph. But something about her response, the confidence in her voice and the mysterious smile, made him feel like he'd just walked into a trap he couldn't see. That weekend, Tyler celebrated with his friends. They planned the perfect prom entrance, a convoy of luxury cars, designer tuxedos, corsages that cost more than most people spent on groceries. Madison had ordered a custom gown from a designer in Manhattan and booked appointments at the most expensive salon in Greenwich for hair and makeup. "It's going to be perfect," Madison gushed as they sat at brunch on Sunday morning at the country club Tyler's family belonged to. "Everyone will be so jealous, and when that scholarship girl sees us together, she'll realize what she could never have had with you." Tyler nodded, but something about Madison's words left a bad taste in his mouth. When had he become the kind of person who defined his worth by making others feel inferior? He pushed the thought away. Maya had made her choice when she chose her pride over their relationship. She could have stayed with him, could have let him help her fit into his world. Instead, she'd chosen to go to Columbia and pursue her dreams alone. Now she would see what she'd given up. Monday morning brought the usual pre-prom excitement to Westfield Academy. Girls gathered in clusters to discuss their dresses and plans. Guys compared notes on dinner reservations and after-party locations. The energy in the hallways was electric with anticipation. Tyler walked through the school with his usual confidence, accepting congratulations on what everyone assumed would be the perfect prom king and queen moment with Madison. Teachers smiled approvingly at the golden couple, and underclassmen looked on with envy and admiration. But as the day wore on, Tyler noticed something strange. Maya wasn't at school. It wasn't unusual for seniors to skip classes in the final weeks, especially if they'd already been accepted to college and were maintaining their GPAs. But Tyler found himself looking for her throughout the day, wondering where she was and what she was planning. Maybe she realized how pathetic it would be to show up alone and changed her mind, Cameron suggested when Tyler mentioned Maya's absence. Or maybe she's shopping for a dress at Goodwill and it's taking all day, Madison added with a cruel laugh that made Tyler wince. But Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that Maya's absence meant something more. She wasn't the type to back down from a challenge or hide from an uncomfortable situation. If anything, she was more likely to face it head-on with the quiet dignity that had always made her stand out at Westfield. Tuesday and Wednesday passed with no sign of Maya, and Tyler began to feel increasingly uneasy. His friends assumed he was nervous about prom night, which was partly true, but there was something else nagging at him. Maya's confident smile when she'd accepted his invitation kept replaying in his mind, and he couldn't figure out what it meant. Thursday brought Maya back to school, but she seemed different somehow. There was an energy about her, a subtle excitement that she was trying to contain. She moved through her classes and activities with the same grace as always, but Tyler caught glimpses of suppressed smiles and whispered conversations with her small group of friends. During lunch, Tyler watched from across the cafeteria as Maya sat with her usual group: Sarah, a brilliant math student bound for MIT, James, the editor of the school newspaper who was heading to Northwestern, and Lisa, an artist who'd been accepted to Parsons. They weren't the popular kids by Westfield standards, but they were all exceptional in their own ways, all heading to prestigious colleges based on merit rather than family connections. As Tyler observed them, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. They were laughing together, genuinely enjoying each other's company in a way that felt real and unforced. Maya looked happy, not the performative happiness he saw in Madison's constant social media posts, but genuine contentment and joy. When had he last felt that kind of authentic happiness? When had he last laughed with friends about something other than gossip or social status? Friday arrived with all the chaos and excitement of prom day at a prep school. Classes were half empty as students left early for salon appointments and last-minute preparations. The school parking lot looked like a luxury car showroom as students showed off their rides for the evening: Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes, even a few Maseratis courtesy of particularly indulgent parents. Tyler spent the afternoon at his family's estate, getting ready with Cameron and Jackson while a personal stylist fussed over their tuxedos and a photographer captured every moment for social media. His parents beamed with pride as they took pictures, talking about how handsome he looked and how perfect he and Madison were together. "You're going to have such a wonderful time tonight, sweetheart," his mother gushed as she adjusted his bow tie for the 100th time. "Madison looks absolutely stunning in her dress. Her mother showed me pictures. It's a Vera Wang, you know. You two are going to be the most beautiful couple there." Tyler nodded and smiled, playing the part of the excited prom-goer, but his mind kept wandering to Maya. Where was she getting ready? Was she alone, or did she have friends helping her? Was she nervous or excited or regretting her decision to attend? Why did he even care? At 6 o'clock, Tyler's group gathered at the Webb family mansion for pre-prom pictures and champagne toasts. Madison looked stunning in her pale pink gown that hugged her curves perfectly and sparkled with hundreds of tiny crystals. Her hair was swept up in an elaborate updo that had taken 3 hours to create, and her makeup was flawless. "You look incredible," Tyler told her, and he meant it. Madison was objectively beautiful, the kind of girl who belonged on magazine covers. "So do you, baby," she replied, straightening his lapel possessively. "We're going to look amazing together. I can't wait for everyone to see us." They took dozens of photos in the mansion's manicured gardens, every shot looking like it belonged in a society magazine. Madison's parents hired a professional photographer to capture every moment, and Tyler's friends took hundreds of pictures with their phones to post across all their social media accounts. At 7:30, they climbed into their respective cars for the drive to the Marriott in downtown Hartford, where Westfield Academy held its prom each year. Tyler drove his BMW while Cameron followed in his Porsche, and Jackson brought up the rear in his father's Mercedes. It was a convoy of teenage privilege, heading to what they expected would be their perfect night. The hotel ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights, elegant drapery, and elaborate floral arrangements. The prom committee had chosen a Starry Night theme, and the decorations were undeniably beautiful. A professional DJ played music from a stage decorated with silver stars, while round tables draped in midnight blue surrounded a polished dance floor. Tyler and his group made their grand entrance, and as expected, all eyes turned to admire them. Madison preened under the attention, posing for pictures and accepting compliments on her dress. Tyler played his part perfectly, the handsome prom king-to-be with his beautiful queen by his side. But even as he smiled and socialized, Tyler found himself scanning the room for Maya. She hadn't arrived yet, and a small part of him wondered if she'd changed her mind after all. Maybe she'd realized how awkward it would be to attend alone and decided to stay home. The thought should have brought him satisfaction. Proof that his plan had worked, that Maya understood her place and had chosen not to embarrass herself. Instead, he felt oddly disappointed. At 8:15, just as Tyler was beginning to think Maya wasn't coming, a murmur swept through the ballroom. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, and heads turned toward the entrance. Tyler followed their gaze and felt his jaw drop. A white stretch limousine had pulled up to the hotel entrance, and students were pressing against the windows to see who would emerge. The chauffeur, dressed in a crisp uniform, walked around to open the passenger door with ceremonial flourish. The first person to step out was Brandon Chen, the valedictorian from rival prep school Millbrook Academy, dressed in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. He turned to help the next passenger, and gasps echoed through the watching crowd as Sophia Martinez emerged, the head girl from Greenwich Academy who had been featured in Teen Vogue for her environmental activism and was bound for Harvard in the fall. But the real shock came when the third passenger stepped out of the limousine. Maya Rodriguez emerged like a princess from a fairy tale, and Tyler felt the air leave his lungs completely. She was wearing a deep emerald green gown that hugged her figure perfectly before flowing out into an elegant train. The dress was clearly expensive. Tyler's trained eye could tell it was designer, probably worth more than most people's cars. Her dark hair was styled in flowing waves that cascaded over one shoulder, and her makeup was subtle but perfect, highlighting her natural beauty rather than hiding it behind layers of product like so many of the other girls. But it wasn't just her appearance that stopped the room cold. It was the way she carried herself, with confidence, grace, and quiet power that commanded attention without demanding it. She looked like royalty, like someone who belonged on red carpets and magazine covers. As if her transformation wasn't shocking enough, more passengers emerged from the limousine. Alex Thompson, the star quarterback from Brunswick School who had committed to play at Stanford. Emma Williams, the musical theater prodigy from Miss Porter's school who had already been cast in an off-Broadway production. David Park, the nationally ranked debate champion from Choate who was headed to Princeton. Each new arrival was more impressive than the last. Students from the most prestigious prep schools in Connecticut, all accomplished, all bound for Ivy League colleges, all clearly friends with Maya. They gathered around her like a court surrounding their queen, laughing and talking with the easy familiarity of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Tyler stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, his mouth hanging open in shock. This wasn't possible. How could Maya, the girl he'd dismissed as a social outcast, be arriving with some of the most accomplished and well-connected students from the most exclusive schools in the state? "Who are those people?" Madison hissed beside him, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his arm. "And why is everyone staring at them instead of us?" Tyler couldn't answer. He was too busy watching Maya glide through the ballroom entrance, greeting other students with warm smiles and air kisses like she'd been born to this kind of social scene. The same girl he'd told didn't know which fork to use at a formal dinner was navigating the social dynamics of the room with more skill and authenticity than half the girls who'd been attending etiquette classes since childhood. "Tyler!" Cameron appeared at his elbow, his voice tight with confusion and something that might have been respect. "Dude, your ex just showed up with the most impressive group I've ever seen at one of these things. How did she even meet these people?" Tyler shook his head, still unable to process what he was seeing. Maya was supposed to arrive alone, awkward and out of place, so everyone could see how much better off he was without her. Instead, she'd arrived like the guest of honor at a state dinner, surrounded by people whose accomplishments made even Westfield's elite look ordinary. As Maya and her group made their way into the ballroom, conversations stopped and started in their wake. Students pulled out their phones to Google the names they overheard, and Tyler heard fragments of awed whispers. "That's Brandon Chen. He has a perfect SAT score and already has 2 patents pending for technology innovations he developed." Sophia Martinez was personally invited to speak at the United Nations Climate Summit. Emma Williams has been performing professionally since she was 12 and is already being courted by Broadway casting directors. Tyler felt sick to his stomach. Not only had Maya shown up looking absolutely stunning, but she'd brought a group of friends whose achievements made his own accomplishments look trivial by comparison. Being captain of the lacrosse team suddenly seemed insignificant next to someone who had spoken at the UN or held technology patents. Maya seemed to sense his stare because she looked across the room and caught his eye. For a moment, they regarded each other across the crowded ballroom. Tyler expected to see smugness or vindication in her expression. After all, she'd clearly orchestrated this entrance to show him up. Instead, Maya smiled at him with what looked like genuine warmth and gave him a small wave, as if she were simply happy to see an old friend. Then she turned her attention back to her companions, laughing at something Brandon had whispered in her ear. "We need to go over there," Madison said suddenly, her competitive instincts kicking in. "We can't let them steal our thunder. This is supposed to be our night." But Tyler couldn't move. He was too busy trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. This wasn't how the evening was supposed to unfold. Maya was supposed to fade into the background, while he shone brightly with Madison by his side. Instead, she was the clear center of attention, effortlessly outclassing everyone in the room, including him. As the evening progressed, Tyler watched in growing amazement as Maya worked the room like a seasoned diplomat. She introduced her friends to other students with genuine enthusiasm, making connections and fostering conversations that seemed to energize everyone around her. She danced gracefully with each of her male companions, laughed warmly at their jokes, and drew other students into their circle with inclusive gestures that made everyone feel welcome. Meanwhile, Tyler found himself increasingly isolated, despite being surrounded by his usual crowd. Madison was growing more petulant by the hour as it became clear that she wasn't going to be the belle of the ball she'd expected to be. His friends seemed distracted, constantly glancing over at Maya's group and making comments about how impressive her companions were. "I heard Brandon Chen is already working with a tech startup that's being courted by Google," Jackson said during a lull in conversation. "And that Sophia girl has been on CNN talking about climate policy. These aren't just smart kids, they're actually making a difference in the world." Tyler felt his jaw clench. "They're just showing off. It's not that impressive." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Maya's friends weren't showing off. They were simply being themselves, and themselves happened to be extraordinary. They talked about their accomplishments matter-of-factly, without boasting or pretension, the way people do when they're secure in their abilities and don't need external validation. It was exactly the kind of authentic confidence Tyler had always found so attractive in Maya, and seeing it reflected in her choice of friends made him realize something uncomfortable about himself. When had he become the kind of person who felt threatened by other people's success instead of inspired by it? As the night wore on, Tyler found himself paying more attention to Maya's table than to his own date. He watched as she engaged in animated discussions that seemed to span everything from literature to politics to social justice. Her companions clearly valued her opinions and sought out her perspective on topics Tyler had never heard her discuss during their relationship. Had she always been this intellectually sophisticated, and he'd just been too self-absorbed to notice? Or had she grown and evolved since their breakup in ways that left him behind? The realization hit him like a physical blow. Maya hadn't just moved on from their relationship. She'd moved up. She'd found friends who challenged her, supported her growth, and valued her for exactly the qualities Tyler had dismissed as unimportant. While he'd been focused on maintaining his social status within the narrow confines of Westfield Academy, she'd been building connections with remarkable people from schools across the region. The contrast between their respective groups became even more apparent when the DJ announced it was time for prom court nominations. Tyler had assumed he and Madison would be crowned king and queen. It was practically a given based on their popularity and status at Westfield. But when the nominations were read aloud, Tyler was shocked to hear Maya's name called for prom queen, nominated by students who had clearly been impressed by her grace and the company she kept. The applause for her nomination was thunderous, drowning out the polite clapping that greeted Madison's expected nomination. Tyler was nominated for prom king as anticipated, but the cheers for his nomination seemed half-hearted compared to the enthusiasm Maya had received. He forced a smile and waved to the crowd, but inside he was reeling from yet another unexpected turn in what was supposed to be his triumphant evening. As the voting took place, Tyler found himself in the surreal position of hoping he wouldn't win. The thought of standing on stage next to Maya, having to smile and pretend to be happy while she was crowned queen, was almost unbearable. How had his plan to humiliate her turned into his own public embarrassment? When the results were announced, Tyler's worst fears were confirmed. Maya Rodriguez was crowned prom queen by a landslide vote, her victory so decisive that it bordered on unanimous. The crowd erupted in cheers as Brandon Chen escorted her to the stage, where she accepted her crown with the gracious smile of someone who had never expected the honor but was genuinely touched to receive it. Tyler was named prom king, as expected, but the victory felt hollow and forced. As he joined Maya on stage for the traditional king and queen dance, he felt like he was walking to his own execution. "Congratulations," Maya said softly, as they took their positions for the dance, the crowd watching expectantly. "You look very handsome tonight, Tyler." Her words were kind, with no trace of sarcasm or vindication. She spoke to him like an old friend, someone she genuinely cared about despite everything that had happened between them. "Maya," Tyler started, then stopped. What could he say? That he was sorry? That he'd been wrong about everything? That seeing her tonight had made him realize what a fool he'd been? "It's okay," Maya said, seeming to understand his struggle. "Tonight isn't about the past. It's about celebrating how far we've all come and looking forward to the future." As they danced together in front of their classmates, Tyler was struck by how natural it felt to hold her again. Madison was beautiful and graceful, but dancing with her always felt like a performance, a photo opportunity designed to project an image. Dancing with Maya felt like coming home. "How did you do it?" Tyler asked as they swayed to the slow music, his voice barely audible over the sound. "How did you meet all these incredible people? How did you become this?" Maya looked up at him with those warm brown eyes he'd fallen in love with 2 years ago. "I became myself, Tyler. When you broke up with me, I was devastated. But I also realized that I'd been so focused on fitting into your world that I'd forgotten who I was underneath all of that." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I started reaching out to other students from different schools through academic competitions, volunteer work, and summer programs. I discovered there was this whole community of kids who cared about more than just social status and family money. Kids who were passionate about learning, about making a difference, about building something meaningful with their lives. Tyler felt his chest tighten. They're all so accomplished. They make our achievements here look different, Maya finished diplomatically. Not less important, just different. There's more than one way to measure success, Tyler. There's more than one way to build a meaningful life. As the song ended, Tyler found himself reluctant to let her go. For just a few minutes, he'd remembered what it felt like to be with someone who saw the best in him, who challenged him to be better without making him feel inadequate. Maya, he said as they stepped apart, I need to tell you something. I invited you here tonight because I wanted to show off, to make you feel bad about how our relationship ended. I wanted you to see me with Madison and feel like you'd lost something important. Maya nodded, her expression understanding rather than surprised. I know, Tyler. I could tell from the way you asked me. But I came anyway because I wanted to see if you'd learned anything, if you'd grown at all since we broke up. Tyler felt heat rise in his cheeks. And what's your verdict? Maya smiled sadly. I think you're still the same person who measures his worth by how others perceive him, who thinks happiness comes from being better than other people instead of being the best version of yourself. But I hope someday you'll figure out what actually matters. Before Tyler could respond, Madison appeared at his side, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Tyler, we need to talk. Now, she hissed, grabbing his arm with enough force to leave marks. Maya stepped back gracefully. I'll let you two have your conversation. Thank you for the dance, Tyler. It was nice to remember the good times. She walked away, rejoining her accomplished friends who welcomed her back with warm smiles and congratulations on her crown. Tyler watched her go, feeling like he was losing something precious all over again. Madison dragged him to a quiet corner of the ballroom, her carefully applied makeup starting to show cracks from stress and perspiration. This is a disaster, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I'm supposed to be prom queen. I've been planning this night for months. My dress cost $5,000, Tyler. $5,000! And that scholarship girl just waltzed in here and stole my moment. Tyler looked at Madison's furious face and felt a strange detachment, as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. Her anger wasn't about love or hurt feelings. It was about status, about appearances, about maintaining her position in a social hierarchy that suddenly seemed petty and meaningless. Madison, he said carefully, maybe this isn't that important in the big picture. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Not important? Tyler, everyone at school is going to remember this night. They're going to remember that your ex-girlfriend showed up and made us look like fools. Do you know what people are saying? They're saying she's too good for you, that you made a mistake letting her go. Tyler felt something twist in his chest. Maybe they're right. The words came out before he could stop them, and Madison's face went white with shock. What did you just say? Tyler looked across the ballroom to where Maya was laughing with her friends, her tiara catching the light as she threw her head back in genuine joy. For the first time in months, he told the absolute truth. I said maybe they're right. Maybe I did make a mistake. Maybe Maya is too good for me, and maybe everyone can see it except me. Madison's carefully constructed composure cracked completely. Are you seriously going to stand there and tell me you're still in love with that nobody? After everything we've built together? After all the plans we made? What exactly have we built, Madison? Tyler asked, his voice growing stronger. What plans? You mean the plans where we go to expensive colleges our parents paid for, then get jobs in companies our families own, and spend the rest of our lives going to charity galas and country club events while complaining about how hard it is to find good help? Madison stared at him like he'd lost his mind. That's called success, Tyler. That's called living well. What's wrong with wanting a good life? Nothing's wrong with wanting a good life, Tyler said, watching Maya help a shy sophomore from their school join the conversation with her impressive friends. But I'm starting to think there's a difference between living well and living meaningfully. Before Madison could respond, Tyler walked away, leaving her standing alone in the corner of the ballroom. He needed air, space, time to think about what was happening to him. Outside the hotel, Tyler found a quiet spot on the terrace overlooking the Hartford skyline. The cool night air felt good against his face, and the distance from the ballroom's noise and chaos helped him think more clearly. He pulled out his phone and did something he'd never done before. He started researching Maya's friends. What he found made his stomach sink with the realization of just how wrong he'd been about everything. Brandon Chen hadn't just gotten perfect SAT scores. He'd developed a water purification system that was being implemented in developing countries, potentially saving thousands of lives. Sofia Martinez hadn't just spoken at climate summits. She'd organized a youth movement that had influenced actual policy changes in 3 states. Emma Williams wasn't just performing professionally. She'd created a nonprofit that brought musical theater to underserved communities, giving kids opportunities they never would have had otherwise. Every single one of Maya's friends was using their talents and advantages to make the world better in some way. They weren't just accomplished, they were purposeful. They weren't just successful, they were significant. And Maya, the girl he'd dismissed as someone who didn't understand the real world, was at the center of it all, clearly respected and valued by some of the most impressive young people in the country. Tyler sat down heavily on a stone bench, his expensive tuxedo suddenly feeling like a costume he was wearing to play a part he no longer wanted. How had he gotten so lost? How had he become someone who measured worth by bank accounts and family names instead of character and contribution? "You look like you're having some deep thoughts out here." Tyler looked up to see Brandon Chen walking onto the terrace, 2 glasses of punch in his hands. He offered one to Tyler with a friendly smile. "Thanks," Tyler said, accepting the drink, although he wasn't particularly thirsty. "Just needed some air." Brandon nodded understandingly. "These things can be overwhelming, especially when they don't go the way you expected them to." Tyler shot him a sharp look, wondering if there was a hidden meaning in his words. But Brandon's expression was genuinely kind, without any trace of mockery or judgment. "You're Maya's ex-boyfriend, right?" Brandon continued conversationally. "She's mentioned you before." Tyler felt his chest tighten. "What did she say?" "Good things, mostly. She said you were her first real love, that you taught her a lot about herself. She also said you were dealing with a lot of pressure from your family and friends, and that she hoped you'd figure out who you really wanted to be." The words hit Tyler like a physical blow. Even after everything he'd done to her, Maya had spoken about him with kindness and understanding rather than bitterness or anger. "She deserves better than the way I treated her," Tyler said quietly. Brandon studied him for a moment, then sat down on the bench beside him. "You know, Maya's one of the most genuinely good people I've ever met. She has this ability to see the best in everyone, even when they can't see it in themselves." Tyler nodded miserably. "I used to love that about her. Then somehow it started to annoy me, like she was being naive or unrealistic. I think that says more about where you were in your life than about Maya," Brandon said gently. "When we're not happy with ourselves, it's easy to get frustrated with people who still believe in goodness and possibility." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the city lights twinkle below them. Finally, Tyler spoke up. "Can I ask you something? How did you all become friends with Maya? I mean, you're from different schools, different states even. How did you meet her?" Brandon smiled. "Academic summer programs, mostly. Maya and I met at a journalism workshop at Yale 2 summers ago. Sophia was there too. She was working on environmental reporting. Emma we met at a performing arts camp that same summer, where Maya was volunteering as a writing coach for kids who wanted to create their own musicals." Tyler felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. "She never told me about any of that. I mean, I knew she did volunteer work, but she never mentioned meeting people from other schools or going to these programs. Did you ever ask? Brandon asked, not unkindly. The question hung in the air, and Tyler realized with growing shame that he hadn't. He'd been so focused on his own activities, his own social circle, his own priorities that he'd never really explored Maya's world beyond the parts that intersected with his. We all stayed in touch after that summer, Brandon continued. Started a group chat, shared articles and ideas, supported each other through the college application process. Maya was always the one encouraging everyone else, celebrating our victories, helping us through our setbacks. Tyler thought about his own group chat with Cameron and Jackson, which consisted mainly of sports scores, party plans, and complaints about teachers or parents. When was the last time any of them had a conversation about ideas or goals or making a difference in the world? She's special, Tyler said quietly. She is, Brandon agreed. And she sees something special in you too, or she wouldn't have bothered coming tonight after the way your relationship ended. Tyler looked at him in surprise. She told you about that? Brandon nodded. She was pretty hurt by the breakup, especially by some of the things you said about her not fitting into your world. But she never spoke about you with anger or bitterness. She was disappointed, sad that you couldn't see past surface-level differences to what really mattered. Tyler felt sick with shame. I was an idiot. Worse than an idiot, I was cruel. Maybe, Brandon said thoughtfully. But you were also 17 and dealing with a lot of pressure. The question is what you do with that realization now. Before Tyler could respond, the terrace door opened and Maya appeared, looking around until she spotted them. There you are, Brandon. I was wondering where you'd disappeared to. She noticed Tyler and her expression softened. Are you okay? You looked upset when you left the ballroom. Even now, even after everything, her first instinct was to check on his well-being. Tyler felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'm fine, he managed. Just needed some air. Maya studied his face for a moment, clearly not convinced, but too polite to push. Well, we're getting ready to head out soon. There's an after-party at Emma's hotel suite. Nothing too crazy, just good conversation and maybe some room service. She turned to Tyler, and for a moment he thought she might invite him along. But then her expression shifted, becoming more guarded. I hope you have a good rest of your evening, Tyler. You and Madison make a lovely couple. The words were polite but distant, and Tyler realized that whatever window of opportunity he might have had was closing. Maya was being kind but clear. She'd moved on, found her people, built a life that didn't include him. As she and Brandon headed back inside, Tyler sat alone on the terrace, staring out at the city lights and trying to figure out how his life had gone so wrong. He'd had everything: money, status, popularity, a beautiful girlfriend, and college acceptance to one of the most prestigious universities in the world. But sitting there in his $1,000 tuxedo, he felt emptier and more lost than he ever had in his life. Inside the ballroom, the party was winding down. Students were taking final photos, saying goodbyes, and making plans for after-parties. Maya and her friends were preparing to leave, surrounded by other students who had been drawn into their orbit throughout the evening. Tyler watched through the terrace windows as Maya hugged classmates goodbye, her tiara still sparkling on her head and her smile still genuine and warm. She looked like she belonged exactly where she was, not because of what she wore or who her parents were, but because of who she was as a person. Madison appeared at his side, having repaired her makeup and regained some of her composure. There you are. Cameron's parents are having people over at their place in West Hartford. We should go. Everyone's going to be there. Tyler looked at her perfectly made-up face, her designer dress, her expectant expression. A few hours ago, this would have seemed like the natural next step in their perfect evening. Now it felt like another performance in a play he no longer wanted to be part of. I think I'm going to head home, he said quietly. Madison's face fell. Home? Tyler, it's prom night. We can't just go home. What will people think? And there it was, the question that had been driving all of Tyler's decisions for months, maybe years. What will people think? Not what do I want, not what makes me happy, not what's the right thing to do, but what will people think? I don't know, Madison, and honestly, I don't think I care anymore. Tyler walked back into the ballroom, leaving Madison staring after him in shock. He made his way through the crowd, saying polite goodbyes to teachers and classmates until he reached Maya's group near the exit. "Maya," he called out, causing her and her friends to turn. "Can I talk to you for just a minute, privately?" Her friends exchanged glances, clearly protective of her, but Maya nodded. "It's okay. I'll meet you at the car in 5 minutes." They walked to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the remaining prom-goers and hotel staff. Tyler took a deep breath, knowing this might be his last chance to say what he needed to say. "I owe you an apology," he began. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. For the way I broke up with you. For the things I said. For making you feel like you weren't good enough when the truth is I was never good enough for you." Maya's expression softened, but she didn't speak, waiting for him to continue. "I invited you here tonight because I wanted to hurt you, to make you feel small and insignificant. I wanted you to see me with Madison and feel like you'd lost something important." Tyler's voice cracked slightly. "Instead, you showed me what I actually lost when I was too proud and stupid to recognize what I had." He gestured toward where her friends were waiting. "Look at the people you surround yourself with now. Look at what you've accomplished, who you've become. You didn't just move on from our relationship. You moved up. You found people who value you for exactly who you are, people who are making a real difference in the world." Maya's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Tyler, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted. "I need to say this because I don't know if I'll ever get another chance. You are right about everything. I do measure my worth by what other people think. I am more concerned with appearing successful than with being successful at things that actually matter. And I did throw away something real for something shallow." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "I don't expect you to forgive me, and I'm not asking for another chance because I know I don't deserve one. I just wanted you to know that tonight showed me who I really am, and I don't like what I see. But seeing you, seeing the person you've become and the friends you've chosen, gives me hope that maybe I can become someone better too." Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "Tyler, I forgave you a long time ago. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger and hurt was only hurting me. But forgiveness doesn't mean going backward, and it doesn't erase the consequences of choices we've made." She glanced toward her waiting friends, then back to him. "You're right that I've moved on, that I've found my people and built a life that makes me happy. It took me a while to realize that our relationship ending was actually a gift, because it forced me to discover who I really am when I'm not trying to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be." Tyler nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying directly. There was no path back to what they'd had, no second chance at their relationship. That chapter of both their lives was closed. "I hope you find your way, Tyler," Maya continued. "I hope you figure out what actually makes you happy instead of what makes you look successful. And I hope you learn to value people for who they are rather than what they can do for your image." She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek gently, the same way she used to when they were together, and she wanted to comfort him after a difficult day. "Take care of yourself," she whispered. Then she walked away, rejoining her friends who greeted her with concerned questions and supportive smiles. Tyler watched through the lobby windows as Maya's group climbed back into their white limousine, laughing and talking animatedly about their evening. As the car pulled away, he caught a glimpse of Maya through the rear window, her tiara still sparkling on her head, surrounded by people who clearly treasured her friendship. For the first time in months, Tyler felt something that might have been peace. Not happiness. He'd burned too many bridges and hurt too many people for that. But a kind of clarity, an understanding of where he'd gone wrong and what he needed to do to find his way back to becoming someone he could actually respect. He walked to his BMW alone, his perfect prom night having turned into something entirely different, but ultimately more valuable than what he'd planned. As he drove through the quiet Connecticut suburbs toward his family's estate, Tyler thought about Brandon's question. What do you do with that realization now? For the first time in a long time, Tyler thought he might have an answer. The Monday after prom brought the usual post-event buzz to Westfield Academy, but the conversations weren't quite what Tyler had expected. Instead of discussing his and Madison's coronation, or the usual drama about who hooked up with whom at after-parties, students were talking about Maya's group and their impressive accomplishments. Did you know that Brandon guy has already been offered internships at 3 different tech companies? Tyler heard one sophomore say to another as they passed his locker. And that girl Sophia has been invited to speak at conferences in Europe about climate change, her friend replied. I looked up all their names after prom. They're like actually famous in academic circles. Tyler closed his locker and walked toward his first period class, noting how the conversations changed as he passed. Students who had been animated just moments before became quieter, more awkward, clearly unsure how to interact with him after Saturday night's revelations. In advanced literature, Tyler took his usual seat near the back of the classroom and tried to focus on Mrs. Henderson's analysis of The Great Gatsby. But he found himself distracted by Maya's empty desk 3 rows ahead. She'd been absent again, and Tyler wondered if she was avoiding school or simply had better things to do now that college acceptance season was over. The tragedy of Jay Gatsby, Mrs. Henderson was saying, is that he confused having money with being worthy of love. He believed that if he could just accumulate enough wealth and status, Daisy would choose him over Tom. But of course, that's not how love works. Tyler felt like the words were directed specifically at him, even though he knew Mrs. Henderson couldn't have planned this particular lesson in response to weekend events. Still, the parallels were uncomfortably clear. Gatsby's parties were elaborate performances designed to attract Daisy's attention, Mrs. Henderson continued, but they were also fundamentally dishonest. He was pretending to be someone he wasn't in order to win someone whose love was shallow and conditional to begin with. Tyler thought about prom night, about how he'd orchestrated the entire evening as a performance designed to make Maya feel inadequate. Instead, she'd arrived authentically herself, surrounded by people who valued her for exactly who she was. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. After class, Tyler was gathering his books when he noticed something on Maya's desk, a copy of the New York Times folded open to the opinion section. Curious, he walked over and saw that one of the op-eds was highlighted in yellow marker. The headline read, How Elite Schools Can Better Support First-Generation College Students. The byline made Tyler's breath catch. By Maya Rodriguez, Westfield Academy Class of 2024. Tyler quickly scanned the article, his amazement growing with each paragraph. Maya had written a thoughtful, well-researched piece about the challenges faced by students from working-class backgrounds at prestigious schools. She discussed the subtle ways that wealth and privilege created barriers, the importance of mentorship programs, and the need for elite institutions to do better at supporting diverse voices. But what struck Tyler most was the tone of the piece. Maya wrote with authority and compassion, never attacking or blaming, but clearly articulating problems and offering concrete solutions. She'd turned her own experiences, including, Tyler realized, the pain of their relationship, into something constructive and meaningful. At the bottom of the article was a note from the Times editor. Maya Rodriguez is a graduating senior at Westfield Academy and will be attending Columbia University in the fall, where she plans to study journalism and political science. This is her third published piece in major publications this year. Her third published piece. Tyler stared at the newspaper in shock. While he'd been focused on lacrosse games and social media followers, Maya had been building a career as a writer and thinker. She hadn't just been accepted to Columbia, she was already working at the level of their future classmates. Pretty impressive, right? Tyler turned to see James, the editor of the school newspaper and one of Maya's close friends. Tyler had never paid much attention to James before. He was quiet, studious, not part of the popular crowd that Tyler usually noticed. "You knew about this?" Tyler asked, holding up the newspaper. James nodded. "Maya's been working on this piece for months. She interviewed students from 6 different prep schools, researched demographics and retention rates, even spoke with admissions officers. It's real journalism, not just an opinion piece." Tyler felt another wave of realization wash over him. How many other things like this has she been doing that I never knew about? James studied Tyler's face for a moment, seeming to weigh his response carefully. A lot. Maya's been building toward this for years. The writing, the activism, the connections with other students who care about social justice. She's not just going to Columbia to study journalism, she's already living it. Why didn't she ever tell me about any of this when we were together? James shrugged. Did you ever ask? I mean, really ask, not just, how was your day, but actually wanting to know what she cared about and what she was working on. Tyler thought back to their 2 years together, searching his memory for conversations about Maya's goals and passions. He remembered her talking about wanting to make a difference, about caring about social issues. But he'd always seen those as abstract dreams, rather than concrete plans she was actively pursuing. "I thought I knew her," Tyler said quietly. "You knew the version of herself she showed you?" James replied. "The version she thought you wanted to see? Maya has always been careful not to make other people feel threatened by her ambitions or intelligence." The words hit Tyler like a slap. Had Maya dumbed herself down for him? Had she hidden parts of herself because she sensed he wouldn't be supportive or understanding? As if reading his thoughts, James continued. "She never said anything bad about you, by the way. But after you guys broke up, it was like watching her come alive. She started talking about her ideas more openly, sharing her writing, connecting with other students who were passionate about the same things. It was like she'd been holding her breath for 2 years and finally exhaled." Tyler felt sick. "I held her back. Maybe. Or maybe you both just grew in different directions. The question is what you're going to do with that knowledge now." Tyler looked down at Maya's article again, reading the final paragraph where she wrote about the importance of lifting others up rather than pushing them down, of using privilege and advantage to create opportunities for those who hadn't been born with the same benefits. "James," Tyler said suddenly, "can I ask you something about the school newspaper?" James raised an eyebrow. "Sure, I guess. Are you guys always looking for new writers? I mean, is there room for someone who's never really written anything before but wants to learn?" James looked genuinely surprised. "You want to write for the paper?" Tyler wasn't sure exactly what he wanted, but he knew he needed to start somewhere. He needed to find a way to use his voice for something meaningful rather than just maintaining his social status. "I don't know if I have anything important to say yet," Tyler admitted. "But I'd like to find out, and I'd like to learn how to say it well." James was quiet for a moment, clearly trying to gauge Tyler's sincerity. "We have editorial meetings on Wednesday afternoons. You could come to one, see what we're working on. Maya always said you were smarter than you let yourself appear to be." The fact that Maya had defended his intelligence, even after their painful breakup, made Tyler's chest tighten with emotion. Even when he'd been cruel to her, she'd continued to see potential in him that he hadn't recognized in himself. "I'll be there," Tyler said, and for the first time in months, He felt like he was moving towards something instead of just away from his mistakes. That afternoon, Tyler made a decision that would have shocked his friends and family just a week earlier. Instead of going to lacrosse practice, he drove to the community center where Maya volunteered, teaching art classes to elementary school kids. He sat in his BMW in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. What was he doing here? What could he possibly contribute to a program like this? He had no experience with kids, no artistic abilities, no understanding of the challenges these children faced. But every time he started to drive away, he thought about Maya's article, about Brandon's water purification systems, about Sophia's climate activism. These were people who used their talents and advantages to make other people's lives better. Tyler had advantages: time, money, connections, intelligence, but he'd never used any of them for anything meaningful. Finally, he got out of the car and walked into the community center. The sounds of children's laughter and chatter filled the hallways, along with the smell of paint and construction paper. Tyler followed the noise to a large room where about 15 kids between the ages of 6 and 10 were working on various art projects under the supervision of several teenage volunteers. Maya was kneeling beside a little girl who appeared to be struggling with her painting, speaking to her in gentle, encouraging tones. She looked up when she noticed Tyler in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to confusion to something that might have been cautious hope. "Tyler? What are you doing here?" The children and other volunteers looked up at his entrance, taking in his expensive clothes and uncertain expression. Tyler realized he was completely out of his element, but something about the vulnerable honesty of the moment kept him from retreating. "I was hoping I could volunteer," he said simply. "I know I don't have any experience, but I'd like to learn, if you think I could be helpful." Maya studied his face for a long moment, clearly trying to determine his motivations. Finally, she stood up and walked over to him. "This isn't about prom night, is it? This isn't some gesture to try to win me back or make yourself feel better about what happened?" Tyler met her eyes steadily. "No, it's not about that. I know we're not getting back together, Maya. But seeing you Saturday night, reading your article in the Times, realizing how much I didn't know about who you really are, it made me want to figure out who I could be if I stopped worrying so much about who I'm supposed to be." Maya was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you're going to do this, you have to really do it. These kids deserve volunteers who are here for them, not for their own emotional processing." "I understand." Maya led him into the room and introduced him to the other volunteers, explaining that he was interested in helping out. The other teenagers were polite but clearly skeptical. Tyler's reputation had preceded him, and they were protective of the program they cared about. "Why don't you start by helping Marcus with his collage?" Maya suggested, indicating a shy 8-year-old boy who was carefully cutting pictures from magazines. "He's working on a project about his family." Tyler sat down beside Marcus, feeling clumsy and out of place. He'd never spent much time with children and had no idea how to connect with them. But Marcus looked up at him with curious brown eyes and handed him a pair of child-safe scissors. "You can help me cut out the cars," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "I need lots of cars because my dad fixes them." Tyler took the scissors and began carefully cutting around the edges of car advertisements, finding something meditative in the simple, focused task. As he worked, Marcus chattered about his father's job at an auto repair shop, his mother's work at a nursing home, and his little sister who was just learning to walk. "Do you have a little sister?" Marcus asked, gluing a picture of a red convertible onto his poster board. "No, just me," Tyler replied. "But I always thought it would be nice to have siblings." "It's okay most of the time," Marcus said solemnly. "Except when she gets into my toys. But she's pretty funny when she tries to dance to cartoons." Tyler found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in days. There was something refreshing about Marcus's straightforward way of looking at the world, his ability to find joy in simple things like his sister's clumsy dancing or pictures of cars. As the afternoon progressed, Tyler helped several different children with their projects, learning their names and stories. There was Destiny, who was creating a butterfly garden in watercolors because she wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. There was Carlos, who was building a model of his neighborhood out of cardboard because he wanted to become an architect and design better houses for families like his. There was Aisha, who was writing and illustrating her own book about a princess who solved problems with kindness instead of magic. Each child had dreams, talents, and perspectives that were uniquely their own. They came from families that struggled financially, but they were rich in imagination and hope. Tyler found himself genuinely engaged with their projects, asking questions about their ideas and offering encouragement for their creative choices. As the session ended and children began cleaning up their supplies, Marcus tugged on Tyler's sleeve. "Will you come back next week?" he asked. "I want to show you my dad's real garage sometime. Maybe your dad knows about cars, too?" Tyler thought about his father, who paid other people to maintain his collection of luxury vehicles and probably couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. But he smiled at Marcus's innocent assumption that all fathers shared the same interests. "I'd love to come back next week," Tyler said, and meant it. "And I'd love to hear more about your dad's garage." As the children were picked up by parents or older siblings, Tyler helped the other volunteers clean up the art supplies and fold the tables. Maya worked alongside him, their interaction comfortable but still somewhat cautious. "You did well today," she said finally, as they stacked the last of the chairs. "The kids liked you." "They're amazing," Tyler replied. "I had no idea what I was missing by never doing anything like this before." Maya nodded. "They teach you as much as you teach them. Maybe more. It's one of the reasons I love coming here." Tyler hesitated, then decided to ask the question that had been bothering him all afternoon. "Maya, when we were together, did you ever feel like you couldn't be yourself around me?" Maya paused in her cleaning, considering her answer carefully. "Not exactly. But I think I was always aware that we came from different worlds, and I wanted to make sure I fit into yours. I didn't want to seem too intense or too serious about things you might not care about." Tyler felt the familiar stab of guilt and regret. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide parts of yourself." "You didn't make me feel that way," Maya said gently. "I chose to do it because I was insecure about our differences. But the breakup forced me to realize that anyone who truly loves me should want to know all of me, not just the parts that are convenient or comfortable." Tyler nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "The person you've become since we broke up. That's who you always were underneath, isn't it?" "Mostly, yeah. I just needed the courage to let her show." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, and as they prepared to leave, Maya turned to Tyler with an expression that was warm but clear. "Tyler, I'm glad you came today, and I'm glad you want to keep coming. But I need you to understand that this doesn't change anything between us. I care about you as a person, and I want you to find happiness and purpose, but that's going to have to be separate from me." Tyler nodded quickly. "I understand. This isn't about trying to win you back. It's about trying to become someone worth being." Maya smiled, the first completely genuine smile she'd given him since their breakup. "Good. Then I'll see you next week." As Tyler drove home through the fading afternoon light, he thought about the children he'd met and the stories they'd shared. For the first time in months, he'd spent several hours without thinking about his social status, his reputation, or what other people thought of him. He'd simply been present with kids who needed help and encouragement, and the experience had left him feeling more fulfilled than any lacrosse victory or party invitation ever had. His phone buzzed with text messages from Cameron and Jackson, asking where he'd been and why he'd missed practice. There was also a message from Madison, suggesting they get together to plan their strategy for being voted best couple in the senior class yearbook. Tyler looked at the messages and realized that none of these things felt important anymore. The social dynamics that had once consumed his thoughts now seemed petty and exhausting. He wanted to spend his energy on things that mattered, on relationships that were based on more than mutual advantage or shared status. He thought about Maya's article in the Times, about her thoughtful analysis of inequality in elite education. He thought about her friends with their patents and activism and artistic achievements. He thought about Marcus's pride in his father's work and Destiny's dreams of becoming a scientist. For the first time in his life, Tyler began to imagine what it might feel like to be proud of himself for reasons that had nothing to do with money, popularity, or family name. It was a foreign concept, but also strangely exciting. The next few weeks brought significant changes to Tyler's routine and priorities. He continued attending the Wednesday newspaper meetings, where he discovered that he actually enjoyed the process of researching and writing about topics that mattered to the school community. His first article was about the need for more mental health resources for students, a topic he'd become interested in after realizing how much his own anxiety about social status had affected his well-being. He also became a regular volunteer at the community center, developing genuine relationships with the children and other volunteers. Marcus had introduced him to his father, who turned out to be one of the most knowledgeable and skilled mechanics Tyler had ever met, despite having no formal training beyond what he'd learned through experience and necessity. These new activities meant less time for lacrosse practices and social events, which didn't go unnoticed by Tyler's old crowd. Cameron and Jackson repeatedly expressed confusion and concern about his changing priorities. "Dude, you're missing out on everything," Cameron said one Friday afternoon as Tyler prepared to leave school for his volunteer shift instead of joining them at a house party. "Sarah Mitchell's parents are out of town, and she's invited the whole lacrosse team. It's going to be epic." Tyler zipped up his backpack, which now contained art supplies instead of party clothes. "I promised Marcus I'd help him finish his Father's Day project today. His dad's been working double shifts and won't be home until late, so this is our only chance to surprise him." Cameron stared at Tyler like he'd grown a second head. "Marcus? Who the hell is Marcus?" "He's 8 years old, and he's one of the smartest kids I've ever met," Tyler replied simply. "He's building a replica of his dad's garage out of cardboard, complete with working pulleys he designed himself." "Tyler, listen to yourself," Jackson interjected, his voice filled with concern. "You're choosing to hang out with elementary school kids instead of your actual friends. This isn't normal, man. And Madison's been asking where you've been." Tyler paused at his locker, considering how to explain something he was still figuring out himself. Maybe what I thought was normal wasn't actually making me happy. Maybe hanging out with people who see the world as full of possibilities instead of problems is exactly what I need right now. Cameron and Jackson exchanged worried glances. They'd been friends with Tyler since middle school, but this version of him was completely foreign to them. "Is this about Maya?" Cameron asked bluntly. "Because if you're trying to win her back by copying her volunteer thing, it's not going to work. She's made it pretty clear she's moved on." Tyler felt a flash of his old defensiveness, but it faded quickly. "This isn't about Maya. This is about me figuring out who I want to be." "You were fine the way you were," Jackson insisted. "You had everything figured out. College, girlfriend, social life. Now you're acting like some kind of social justice warrior, writing articles about feelings and hanging out at community centers. What's next? Are you going to start protesting on street corners?" Tyler closed his locker and turned to face his friends fully. For the first time, he really looked at them, not as extensions of his own social identity, but as individuals with their own perspectives and motivations. Cameron was the son of a hedge fund manager, destined for an economics degree at Dartmouth and a life of managing other people's money without creating anything of value himself. Jackson's father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships, and Jackson had never shown interest in anything beyond maintaining the family business and the lifestyle it afforded. They were good guys in their own way, loyal, fun to be around, generous with their friendship as long as you stayed within the accepted boundaries of their social circle. But Tyler realized that he'd outgrown those boundaries, and he wasn't sure he could squeeze himself back into them even if he wanted to. "I don't think I was fine the way I was," Tyler said carefully. "I think I was just comfortable, and I confused comfort with happiness. I confused having things with being satisfied." "That's the most pretentious thing I've ever heard you say," Cameron replied. But his tone was more hurt than angry. "We've been friends for years, Tyler. Are you seriously going to throw that away for some philosophical crisis?" Tyler felt the weight of their friendship, the history they shared, the loyalty they'd shown him through the years. But he also thought about Marcus's excitement when he'd successfully engineered his cardboard pulley system, about Destiny's careful observation of real butterflies to make her painting more accurate, about the pride in Maya's eyes when she'd read her published article. "I'm not throwing anything away," Tyler said finally. "But I am growing up, and I think that means being willing to change when you discover something about yourself that you didn't know before." Before his friends could respond, Tyler's phone buzzed with a text from James at the school newspaper. "Tyler, got a tip about the school board meeting tonight. They're discussing budget cuts to arts programs. Interested in covering it? Could be your first real news story." Tyler looked at the text, then at his friends, then made a decision that would have been unthinkable just a month ago. "I have to go," he said, "but not to the community center. There's a school board meeting tonight about cutting arts funding, and I want to cover it for the paper." Cameron threw up his hands in exasperation. "Of course you do, because that's exactly how normal teenagers spend their Friday nights." Tyler started walking toward the exit, then turned back. "You know what? You're right. Normal teenagers probably don't spend Friday nights at school board meetings, but normal teenagers also don't get their articles published in the New York Times or develop water purification systems or organize climate activism that changes actual policy." He thought about Maya and her friends, about the way they'd found each other across different schools and states because they shared something deeper than zip codes or family incomes. "Maybe I don't want to be normal anymore. Maybe I want to be excellent." Tyler left his friends standing in the hallway, their expressions a mixture of confusion, concern, and something that might have been respect. As he walked toward his car, he felt a strange sense of lightness, as if he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't realized was there. The school board meeting was held in the district's administrative building, a sterile conference room with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable chairs. Tyler arrived with a notebook and a borrowed digital recorder, feeling official and purposeful in a way that was entirely new to him. The meeting was sparsely attended, mostly teachers, a few parents, and some school administrators who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Tyler took a seat in the back and tried to look professional while secretly having no idea what he was doing. As the board members discussed budget line items in bureaucratic language that was nearly incomprehensible, Tyler found himself thinking about the art room at the community center, about the joy on children's faces when they successfully mixed colors or created something beautiful with their own hands. When the arts funding discussion finally began, Tyler listened with growing anger to the casual way board members talked about trimming excess and focusing on core curriculum. They spoke about music and art programs like they were luxuries rather than essential parts of education, reducing children's creativity and self-expression to numbers on a spreadsheet. During the public comment period, several teachers stood up to speak passionately about the importance of arts education, particularly for students who struggled in traditional academic subjects. A mother talked about how the school art program had given her shy daughter confidence and a way to communicate when words failed her. Tyler thought about Marcus and his engineered pulleys, about how his artistic project had led him to explore principles of physics and mechanics in ways that were far more engaging than any textbook. He thought about Destiny's scientific observation skills developed through careful attention to color and form in her butterfly paintings. When the moderator asked if there were any other comments, Tyler surprised himself by standing up. "My name is Tyler Ashford, and I'm a senior at Westfield Academy," he began, his voice shaky but gaining strength as he continued. "I'm also a volunteer at the Riverside Community Center, where I work with elementary school kids on art projects." The board members looked up with mild interest, probably wondering what a prep school student was doing at their meeting. "I want to tell you about a boy named Marcus, who's 8 years old and has been coming to our art program for 6 months. Marcus's father is a mechanic, and Marcus loves cars and machines. Through building a cardboard model of his father's garage, Marcus has learned about physics, engineering, problem-solving, and spatial reasoning in ways that are hands-on and meaningful to him." Tyler looked around the room, making eye contact with the board members who were now paying closer attention. Marcus isn't just making art. He's learning to think creatively, to see connections between different ideas, to persist when something doesn't work the first time. Those are exactly the skills we want students to develop, regardless of whether they're planning to be engineers or artists or teachers or anything else. Tyler pulled out his phone and showed a photo he'd taken of Marcus's completed garage project, with its working pulleys and detailed interior. This project required math, science, planning, and artistic vision. It connected to Marcus's family life and cultural background in ways that made learning personal and meaningful, and it gave him confidence to take on challenges that seemed impossible at first. He paused, gathering his thoughts for his conclusion. When you cut arts funding, you're not just eliminating painting and music classes. You're eliminating opportunities for kids like Marcus to discover their own intelligence, to make connections between ideas, to see learning as something exciting rather than something they have to endure. You're telling kids that creativity and self-expression aren't valuable, that only certain kinds of intelligence matter. Tyler sat down, his heart pounding with adrenaline and the strange satisfaction of having spoken up for something he believed in. Around the room, several people were nodding in agreement, and he noticed a few parents writing down notes from his comments. After the meeting, several teachers approached Tyler to thank him for his remarks and to express surprise that a Westfield student was advocating for public school arts programs. One teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, looked familiar, and Tyler realized she shared a last name with Maya. "Are you related to Maya Rodriguez?" Tyler asked. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "She's my daughter. Maya's mentioned you before. You two dated for a while, didn't you?" Tyler felt his cheeks warm. "Yes, though that ended several months ago. Maya's an amazing person. You must be very proud of her." "I am," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "She's worked so hard to get where she is, and she's never forgotten where she came from. Maya's always cared about making sure other kids have the same opportunities she's had." Tyler thought about Maya's New York Times article, about her advocacy for first-generation college students, about the way she'd connected with accomplished students from different backgrounds. "Mrs. Rodriguez, can I ask you something? Maya never told me much about her family when we were dating. I'm realizing now that was probably because I never really asked the right questions." Mrs. Rodriguez studied Tyler's face, seeming to weigh her response. "Maya's very private about some things. She's proud of our family, but she's also aware that her experiences are different from most of her classmates at Westfield. Sometimes it's easier to keep those worlds separate." Tyler nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. "I think I made her feel like she had to choose between those worlds, instead of helping her see that she could bridge them. Maya's figured out how to bridge them just fine," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. "But it's good that you're starting to understand the complexity of what she was navigating." As Tyler drove home from the meeting, he thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's words and about the evening's events. For the first time since prom night, he felt like he'd done something meaningful, something that connected to values beyond his own immediate interests. He spent the weekend writing his article about the school board meeting, researching arts education statistics, and interviewing teachers about the impact of budget cuts. The process was challenging, but engaging in ways that his previous writing assignments had never been. When he submitted the piece to James on Monday morning, Tyler felt nervous and excited in equal measure. "This is really good work," James said after reading through the draft. "You've got quotes, statistics, personal anecdotes, and a clear argument. This reads like professional journalism, not just a student opinion piece." Tyler felt a surge of pride that was different from anything he'd experienced through sports or social achievements. This pride was based on work he'd done, skills he'd developed, and values he'd chosen to stand for. "James, can I ask you something? How did Maya get started with journalism? I mean, how did she go from writing for the school paper to getting published in the Times?" James smiled. "Hard work, mostly. Maya's been writing seriously since sophomore year, but she's also been building relationships with other writers and journalists, attending workshops, applying for competitive programs. She didn't just decide to be a journalist, she systematically learned how to be one." Tyler thought about this distinction. He'd spent his high school years being things: popular, successful, admired, but he'd never really learned how to do anything meaningful. His achievements had been handed to him through family connections and natural advantages rather than earned through dedicated effort. "Do you think it's too late for someone to start taking journalism seriously as a senior?" Tyler asked. "Depends on how serious they are and how hard they're willing to work," James replied. "But if you're really interested, there are summer programs for high school students, internships at local papers, online courses. The question is whether you want to put in the effort to get good at it." Tyler thought about Marcus's careful engineering of his pulley system, about Maya's months of research for her Times article, about Brandon Chen's water purification patents. Excellence required dedication, persistence, and willingness to fail and try again. "I want to get good at it," Tyler said, and meant it. Over the following weeks, Tyler threw himself into journalism with the same intensity he'd once brought to lacrosse, but with a deeper sense of purpose. He covered student government elections, investigating campaign finance irregularities that led to new transparency rules. He wrote about the achievement gap between scholarship students and full-pay students at Westfield, interviewing classmates from different backgrounds about their experiences. Each article required him to step outside his comfort zone, to ask difficult questions, to listen carefully to perspectives that challenged his own assumptions. The process was uncomfortable, but also exhilarating. His relationship with Madison had essentially ended without any formal breakup conversation. She'd grown tired of his changed priorities and had started dating a lacrosse player from a rival school who could give her the attention and lifestyle she wanted. Tyler felt relieved rather than hurt by the transition. Cameron and Jackson remained friendly but distant, clearly hoping this phase would pass and their old friend would return. Tyler understood their confusion and didn't blame them for it, but he also couldn't imagine going back to the person he'd been just a few months earlier. The biggest change was in Tyler's relationship with his parents. His father had been openly critical of Tyler's new interests, particularly his decision to write articles that were sometimes critical of elite institutions like Westfield. "I don't understand why you're biting the hand that feeds you," his father said during a tense dinner conversation. "Westfield has given you opportunities that most kids could never dream of. Why are you writing articles that make the school look bad?" "I'm not trying to make the school look bad," Tyler replied. "I'm trying to make it better. If we can't honestly discuss problems, we can't solve them." His mother, always more focused on social implications, was concerned about how Tyler's new activities might affect his college prospects and social standing. "Sweetheart, I just worry that you're making yourself controversial unnecessarily. What will people think when they see you've been critical of the very institutions you belong to?" Tyler thought about Maya's quiet confidence, about the way she'd navigated criticism and judgment while staying true to her values. Maybe I care more about what I think of myself than what other people think of me, Tyler said, surprising everyone at the table, including himself. His parents exchanged concerned glances, clearly wondering if their son was having some kind of breakdown or rebellion that required professional intervention. As graduation approached, Tyler found himself in an unexpected position. His journalism work had caught the attention of several college professors and admissions officers, leading to opportunities he never could have imagined just months earlier. A journalism professor at Columbia had reached out after reading Tyler's articles online, suggesting he apply for a competitive summer program for aspiring journalists. A nonprofit organization focused on education policy had offered him an internship based on his school board coverage. Even the local newspaper had expressed interest in having him write as a freelancer during his gap year. Tyler realized that he'd stumbled into something that felt like a calling, a way to use his advantages and abilities to shine light on important issues and potentially make a difference in other people's lives. The night before graduation, Tyler sat in his room surrounded by acceptance letters and opportunity descriptions, trying to decide what came next. A year ago, his path had seemed clearly defined. Yale, business school, join his father's company, marry someone appropriate, live the life that had been mapped out for him since birth. Now he had choices he'd never expected and possibilities he'd never considered. He could defer Yale for a year to pursue journalism internships and try to get more articles published. He could transfer to Columbia and study journalism alongside Maya, though he wasn't sure that was wise for either of them. He could stay local and work for the newspaper while taking classes at the state university. For the first time in his life, Tyler was making decisions based on what he wanted to do rather than what he was expected to do. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Tyler! Dad loved the garage project so much he put it in his real garage at work. All the other mechanics want to see it. Can you come help me build something else this summer?" Tyler smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. What do you want to build next?" "A newspaper printing press. I want to help you make real newspapers like the ones you write for." Tyler stared at the message, struck by the beautiful circularity of it. Marcus wanted to help him print newspapers, just as Tyler had helped Marcus build his garage. They were teaching each other, inspiring each other, growing together across differences in age and background and experience. This was what Maya had tried to tell him about authentic connection, about relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than social advantage or convenience. This was what he'd been missing during all those years of measuring his worth by external validation. Tyler looked around his room at the expensive clothes he rarely wore anymore, the lacrosse trophies that no longer seemed important, the pictures of himself with friends who hadn't bothered to understand who he was becoming. Then he looked at his desk, covered with notes from interviews, drafts of articles, and ideas for future stories. On his bulletin board was a drawing Marcus had made of the two of them working together, along with a copy of Maya's Times article that he'd kept as a reminder of what excellent journalism looked like. Tyler opened his laptop and began typing an email to the Columbia journalism professor. He had a story to tell about transformation, about privilege and purpose, about learning to measure success by impact rather than income. Graduation day at Westfield Academy was everything Tyler had expected it to be: elegant, expensive, and designed to impress. Parents arrived in luxury cars wearing designer outfits and expensive jewelry. The ceremony took place on the school's manicured lawn, with white tents and professional photography capturing every moment. Tyler sat with his classmates in alphabetical order, which meant he was several rows away from Maya. He could see her in her cap and gown, sitting straight and proud, her family beaming at her from the audience. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, along with what appeared to be her husband and a younger brother, all dressed in their best clothes and clearly overwhelmed with pride. Tyler's own parents were in attendance, along with his grandparents and several family friends. They'd reserved a table at the country club for a celebration lunch, and his mother had hired a photographer to document every moment of what she called Tyler's triumph. But as Tyler listened to the valedictorian speech and watched his classmates receive their diplomas, he felt oddly detached from the ceremony. This felt like the end of someone else's story rather than a culmination of his own journey. When Maya's name was called, the applause was thunderous. She walked across the stage with quiet dignity, shook hands with the headmaster, and accepted her diploma with a smile that could have powered the entire sound system. Tyler found himself clapping harder than he had for anyone else, genuinely happy for her success. When his own name was called, Tyler walked across the stage to polite applause, shook the requisite hands, and smiled for the cameras. But the moment felt hollow compared to the satisfaction he'd felt when his first real journalism piece was published or when Marcus had successfully completed his garage project. After the ceremony, there was a reception on the school grounds where families mingled and took pictures. Tyler was surrounded by relatives offering congratulations and asking about his college plans, but he found himself scanning the crowd for Maya. He spotted her near the edge of the reception, saying goodbye to teachers and taking pictures with her small group of close friends. She looked radiant, her happiness genuine and infectious. Tyler excused himself from his family's conversation and walked over to where Maya was standing. "Congratulations," he said simply. "You earned every bit of this." Maya turned and smiled at him, her expression warm but not overly emotional. "Thank you, Tyler. Congratulations to you, too. I heard about your journalism work. I'm really proud of you for finding something you're passionate about." Tyler felt his chest tighten with emotion. Even now, even after everything, Maya's first instinct was to encourage and support him. "I read every article you published this year," Tyler admitted. "They were all incredible. You're going to change the world, Maya." "We're all going to change the world," Maya replied. "The question is whether we're going to change it for the better or just change it for ourselves." Tyler nodded, understanding the distinction she was making. "I'm trying to figure out how to make it better." "I know you are," Maya said, "and I think you will." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at Maya's side, clearly eager to continue their family celebration. Tyler shook her hand and congratulated her on raising such an exceptional daughter. "Thank you for speaking at the school board meeting," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "The arts programs were saved, partly because of the attention your article brought to the issue." Tyler felt a surge of satisfaction. His work had made a real difference, had protected opportunities for kids like Marcus to explore their creativity and intelligence. As Maya's family prepared to leave, she turned back to Tyler one last time. "Tyler, I want you to know that I think you're going to be just fine. You're learning to ask the right questions, and that's the most important skill any journalist can have." "What do you mean?" Maya smiled. "You're learning to ask, 'How can I help?' instead of, 'What's in it for me?' That's going to take you places you never imagined." Before Tyler could respond, Maya was swept away by her celebrating family, leaving Tyler standing alone among his classmates and their families. Tyler looked around the reception, seeing it clearly for perhaps the first time. The expensive clothes, the ostentatious jewelry, the conversations about summer houses and European vacations and business deals. It was beautiful in its way, but it was also insular and self-referential, focused inward rather than outward. Tyler thought about the community center kids who would be starting their summer art program next week, about the school board members who would be making decisions about educational funding, about the readers who might be influenced by the articles he would write in college and beyond. He thought about Maya heading to Columbia with her scholarship and her determination to tell stories that mattered. He thought about her friends with their patents and activism and artistic achievements, all of them using their talents to make the world a little bit better. For the first time in months, Tyler felt excited about his future rather than anxious about it. He had work to do, stories to tell, skills to develop. He had Marcus and the other community center kids to mentor, and they would undoubtedly teach him as much as he taught them. Tyler walked back to his family's celebration, ready to begin the difficult conversations about his changing plans and priorities. He wasn't the same person who had invited Maya to prom with the intention of humiliating her. He wasn't even the same person who had graduated just an hour earlier. He was someone new, someone still becoming, someone learning to measure his worth by the positive impact he could have rather than the advantages he'd been born with. As Tyler rejoined his family's festivities, he pulled out his phone and sent a text to Marcus. "Graduation is over. Ready to start building that printing press next week?" The response came back immediately. "Yes, I already started designing it. Wait until you see what I figured out about gears." Tyler smiled and put his phone away, feeling more hopeful about the future than he had in years. He'd learned the most important lesson of his young life, that true success wasn't about being better than other people, but about becoming better than the person you used to be. And for Tyler Ashford, that journey was just beginning.